I'm going to reveal the best kept Jewish secret that we have, and that is the Jewish secret to financial success. And in case you don't know what I'm talking about, I think we all kind of know that Jews have a proclivity to be a little more financially successful than the overall population. Now, in case you don't believe me, let me quote a statistic to you that should put things into perspective. We make up 0.2% of the world's population. That's it, 0.2%. And yet, at the same time, we make up 20% of the world's billionaires. How is that even possible? And if you do the math, that is many, many times over successful than we should actually be per our population. So what is the key to Jewish financial success? And people have written books on this. By the way, mostly non-Jews have written books on this because the Jews won't actually give away the real secret to our own financial success. But the secret to our financial success, I believe, comes from the Jewish cultural act of giving. That's right. And it seems quite counterintuitive. We have so much because we are able to also give so much. Let me quote to you another statistic in case you don't believe my estimations about the Jewish propensity to give. We make up in the United States, that other statistic that I quoted, 0.2% of the world's population. We make up between 2 and 3% of the American population. Yet here in America, Jews comprise about 25% of philanthropic giving in the United States. That is quite incredible. We have had so much financial success because of our ability to be able to give. And this is a long-known Jewish secret, by the way. If you go back to the Talmud and you go to Tractate Shabbat 119a, you'll find a rather interesting discussion that the rabbis have. They ask the question, why are the Jews in Eretz Yisrael so wealthy? And the answer that they give is they give so much tzedakah. That's right. Because we are able to give philanthropically, it makes us wealthy overall. And I'm not only talking about a wealth that comes from self-satisfaction. You know, you have that great line from Pirkei Avot that says, Ezehu Ashir, who is rich? And the answer that the rabbis give is, Misha Sameach Bechoko, the person who is happy with whatever they have. That's a mindset of being rich or being wealthy. The rabbis aren't talking about that in the Talmud. They're talking about quite literal wealth, not emotional wealth. That's how you feel about your own lot. They are talking particularly about a wealth that exists among the Jewish people. Now, rabbis should not be your financial advisors. And I'm about to tell you why. Because I'm going to give you completely contrary advice to every single financial advisor probably in the entire world. Because if someone were to come to me and they were to say, Rabbi, I'm down to my last bottom dollar, what should I do? I would tell them the following: give tzedakah. And that is terrible financial advice. But I think it is beautiful Jewish advice. It's not only counterintuitive, because it's very much counterintuitive. Your financial advisor might tell you something along the lines of, we need to begin a savings program for you so that you can accumulate and amass a little bit more wealth, and then and only then can we put that wealth to work for you. It's probably what your financial advisor would tell you. I would tell you, with the money that you have, there is always room to be able to give tzedakah. And I'm not the only rabbinic financial advisor to give this advice, whether you think it's wise or not. Our great financial advisor, Rabbi Moshe ben Maimon, also known as Rambam or Maimonides, says the following. He says, anyone who gives tzedakah will never be poor. And anyone who gives tzedakah will never be not so well off. Again, counterintuitive. But I think this, Jews happen to be some of the most countercultural people that we have on the entire planet. When people zig to the right, we zig to the left. We're doing something that is different from the way that other people operate, and there is genius behind every single intention in the moves that we make. And it's not only the Talmud, by the way, that suggests this kind of financial advice. Let's go to our Torah portion this week, Parshat Truma. Now, the first act of communal giving of the Israelite people comes in next week's Parsha. And that might be a little confusing for a second, because chronologically, the story of the golden calf comes before the story of the building of the tabernacle. But in the Torah, they're listed somewhat chronologically out of order. So let me start out with that. The first communal act of giving of the Israelite people is when they all collect their gold from one another in order to build a golden calf. Not so much a sacred act of giving. That's kind of giving to the wrong thing, giving for idolatrous purposes. But the second act of communal giving that the Israelite people do happens in this week's Torah portion. And let's just call it the first, most sacred act of giving that the Israelites do. Each and every person among the Israelites, that means everybody among the Israelites, needs to be able to give something, asher yidvenu libo, however so their heart moves them to be able to give. That creates a lot of commentary on what exactly that means. For some people, it's giving of silver and gold and precious metals, and for other people, it's giving of their time and their talents. But each and every person, in order to build this sacred structure, needs to be able to give. The community becomes enriched as a whole by the ability of every single person being able to give. I would imagine that if you're a nomadic people wandering through the wilderness, you don't have all that much to give to begin with, especially when you've already given for that golden calf thing that just happened, in the previous moments. But now you're going to give a little bit more, despite how little you might have, because the more you give, the more you are made wealthy. Sometimes there's a little bit of a mindset shift that we need to have for a second. And I want to tell you a story about a rather famous Jew. Famous Jew is named another Moses, but this person's name was Moses Montefiore. And in the 19th century, he was kind of like the Jewish Renaissance man of England. He was the sheriff of London in the mid-19th century. He held a number of other esteemed positions. Let's just say this guy had some serious juice. If you've ever been to Israel and you were in Jerusalem, the very first neighborhood that was built outside the old city walls was called Yamin Moshe, which means the right hand of Moshe, or it's also called Mishkanot Shenananim, which means something like tranquil places. And the Moshe that it's talking about is Moses Montefiore, who helped fund this neighborhood being built. So this was a guy who was not just incredibly wealthy, but incredibly philanthropic as well. And someone asks him the question, what are you worth? And he gives some large figure about how much he is worth. And the person thinks for a second and says, wait a second, I know you have significantly more money than that you've amassed in your lifetime. That number is way too low. And he said, you didn't ask me how much I have. You asked me how much I'm worth. And the amount that I'm worth is only how much I am able to give to others. And so I calculated the total amount of tzedakah that I've given in the last year, and that's the number that I gave you, the amount that I believe that I am worth. In other words, we're only worth as much as we are able to give. It's a beautiful Kabbalistic teaching about this as well. It imagines that there is a divine flow, in Hebrew called a shefa, that goes from heaven and to earth, or from God down to us. And the more that we amass and the more that we hold onto, the more that we stop up the divine pipeline that brings down God's presence to us. And what the Kabbalah recommends, what the Zohar recommends, is that if you keep the pipeline flowing and moving, that is, that which you receive, you continuously give on to others, you will continuously receive from the divine presence. What a beautiful concept about giving. That which comes to us from God, we give on further to others and keep the divine presence flowing. This is quite a countercultural message that I'm offering, I think, this morning, but it's a message about how to have an abundance mindset, but a different kind of abundance mindset. That is, the more that you are able to give, the more that you perceive yourself to have, but actually, the more that you are able to give, the more you trust that the more you will receive from the divine presence. So, maybe this week, maybe this month, consider how much you have given to others. And remember that just because your checkbook might be a little lower than you expected, if you want it to actually be higher, the thing that you might do is give more than you are currently used to giving. Again, never take financial advice from rabbis. But I think this goes beyond a little bit about financial advice. This is life advice. This is the friendly reminder that tzedakah is one of the keys to Jewish success, and although it might not seem like it, we are able to receive and amass the amount of success and wealth simply by the sacred act of giving to others.